Aye.
Speaker, I rise on behalf of the Greens as the Green Party member of the Privileges Committee, and I am astounded by the last three past ACT Party MPs who seem far more offended about alleged finger guns than actual gun violence, children living in poverty, or workers being exploited. I found it extremely shameful being a migrant to this country, having been here by virtue of tatidity, and have a fellow migrant in the Privileges Committee actually continue to scapegoat Māori communities and flirt with the idea of imprisoning the Pati Māori members of Parliament. So shameful and brings our migrant communities into disrepute. But I think rolling out their token migrants to do these tactics is a sign of fear, that more migrant communities are working with Māori to honour tatidity and stand against the politics of division that they represent. The Privileges Committee is, as others have talked about, a senior committee that is supposed to be, ruled by consensus. But in this debate, it has been shown the members of the government would rather show their performative tears and outrage over this issue that they themselves inflicted us with. They chose this punishment. They chose to say, that they found it unprecedented. They chose to hand a punishment 7 times bigger than what has been given before. And I am sick and tired of members of the government and their performative outrage about this so-called dropping standards of this House when it is the former Deputy Prime Minister who continuously asks out-of-order questions from the House and challenges the speakers on an almost weekly basis. It's always those that are complaining the loudest about the so-called dropping standards that are lowering the standards themselves. I just heard the previous ACT Party speaker talking about cruelty, when actually we have had members of the government using terms like sick idiots to refer to other members in the House, idiots actually just up until recently, and constant slurs and languages and literally anti-migrant rhetoric in this chamber. They should look in the mirror. They should look in the mirror, and the ACT Party members may want to tell their leader to stop driving up Parliament steps before they start their crocodile tears about the lowering standards of the House. And for those lecturing to Pati Māori about how they should behave, let it be reminded that the Pati Māori, the Greens, and any of us are not here to represent the government members of the House. We're here to serve the voters who elected us. Those voters who elected us into this place, they knew what we stood for. The Pati Māori voters knew what the Pati Māori stands for, and they're accountable to their voters, not to you. The Green Party does not support the recommendations of the Privileges Committee because it is indeed unprecedented. And I found it ignorant of the members to actually be conflating the Haka with intimidatory behavior. That's on them. Because actually, the world is watching us. And in fact, many around the world, including in my homeland of Mexico, are watching with pride. Indigenous communities in my homeland are watching us with pride and with hope about what happened in the House last year. Because it served as a reminder of the power that Indigenous peoples across the world can tap into to seek justice. I was flooded with messages from people in my homeland feeling pride about our parliament. And yet these government members seek to completely misunderstand the sentiment around the world that was of hope, and it was about inspiration and what is actually possible. Indeed, there are rules in this House that are actually completely made up, often a vestige of a British Parliament that actually, they're made up. All rules are made up. All rules are made up by humans. That's what rules are literally are. Like, rules are made up by humans, and humans can change the rules. And I do welcome the call from some other members that it is time to review the rules of Parliament to better incorporate tikanga into this place. I actually find it weird that out of all the things that I've said, the thing they find the most offensive is that I just said that rules are made up. Because literally, every time they put up a bill in this House, a lot of the times it's made up. Actually, they have no evidential basis for most of the legislation that they push through. And now they seem to be most outraged by the fact that I just reminded them that we have the power to make and change the rules of this place. So once again, I want to remind the members of the government, particularly those that had representatives in the Privileges Committee who chose this unprecedented government, that they had a choice. They had a choice between choosing performative outrage and an unprecedented punishment, or to reflect and stand back on the fact that the world is watching us and we could be leaders about how we choose to have a democracy that actually represents our foundational document, and indeed, as representatives of the Crown in this place, to actually honour the Te Reti o Waitangi. And instead, we have a government that uses this performative outrage to distract from their anti-Māori legislation to create this theatre. They were the ones who chose for us to have this debate. And in the Greens, we did take this decision collectively. I have a feeling that the government members who were in the Privileges Committee probably didn't even talk to the colleagues about the unprecedented punishment that they were handing out. I have a feeling that they were driven by their own personal ideological vendettas. I have a feeling that they completely ignored and did not take into account the repercussions that actually our parliament could be brought into disrepute potentially internationally, because the world is also watching this debate and the punishment that is being handed. And indeed, this is setting a precedent. It's setting a precedent because future governments, and if we have future sessions of the Privileges Committee under the current membership, what we now have is a precedent of A, acting incredibly in a partisan way, and B, now creating a new threshold of suspension that will lift basically any future considerations that we make. And again, I want to remind those members that were so outraged about the cruelty of this place. They may want to maybe talk to their colleagues about their constant breaches of standing orders, the constant disregard for the House, the constant insults, and that they perhaps, as they've said, that they got more important things to debate, then they want to actually introduce legislation that fixes the issues that we face instead of, for example, having budgets that allow child poverty to remain at staggering levels. I genuinely wish that they would bring this kind of energy and, so-called heart onto the issues that matter. But instead, they've chosen to do a sideshow of distraction. And you know what? I'd rather be debating this than be debating bills that will leave more people in poverty. I would rather be here talking about the self-inflicted debate that they created than actually debating bills that will cause harm in our communities. I don't care for the bills that they bring into this House because they're causing harm on our communities. So be it. We have to spend time scrutinizing the decisions they made then we'd so have it. I support the amendment by my co-leader, Marama Davidson, to actually change the punishment from suspension to censure. Why? Because actually, if it was completely up to us, we would have paused the Privileges Committee process and not have this debate altogether to allow for a review of how tikanga can be incorporated in this place and then look at this issue with fresh eyes. But right now, what we have is an opportunity, and the government members have an opportunity to reflect on what they have done and to change their minds. It's never too late. It's never too late to realize they made the wrong decision, that they're setting an unprecedented threshold that now government members will keep using to punish other MPs to basically prevent them from participating in the House. Te Pati Māori was right, that countless of voters will be missing representation in this place as a result of this unprecedented punishment. And I find it staggering that when the ACT Party member justified the decision, she didn't explain why. She just said it was justified. But that's 7 times as much as we've had before. I don't think it's justified, and I challenge members of the government to actually give us an actual justification as to A, why they find the Haka intimidatory, because I think most New Zealanders wouldn't agree with that. B, to explain to us why they thought setting a punishment 7 times higher than it's been set before is justified. Because so far, they haven't. We've had crocodile tears, we have performative outrage, but we haven't had an actual debate on this issue. We have the former Deputy Prime Minister rambling throughout his contribution in this debate without offering any meaningful substance to this issue. If they think it is so serious, then they would treat it as such. But for them, it's a convenient platform to attack Māori, to push through the politics of divisions that they stand for. And we think that there's an opportunity here for some actual common sense that they seem to claim to stand for, to actually change the motion in front of us, to not create this unprecedented punishment that would actually be a terrible, terrible thing for us to have in future Privileges Committee meetings. Because this will now be used, this is history in the making, this will now be used every time we consider something in the Privileges Committee as a bar. And I think that's shameful. I invite the members of the government to use their common sense and their wisdom rather than their politicking to actually change the motion in front of us and to accept our amendment. Speaker.
Ooh, that's
interesting with him using the word precedent.
Yeah, that's the outrage, or the eloquent outrage of a man who was on the committee and saw everything that went on behind closed doors.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. But you know, oh, sorry, Gary, go ahead.
The point he made about Winston Peters being constantly disorderly was exactly perfect.
Mm-hmm.
The one I've been in there for 18 months waiting for the speaker to throw him out of the house for being disorderly, and it finally happened on the day when they closed the gallery. I felt cheated.
Of course.
Yeah.
But yes, Winston Peters is out of order and disorderly every single sitting day.
And usually gets brushed off.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
There was so much that Ricardo was saying. There was everything he can say without breaching the
confidentiality
of the committee. I think he went as far as he could with that.
mm-hmm. He said everything he could say without also ending up in front of the Privileges Committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, Sam, he's absolutely right. This is going to set a precedent for what happens in the future. It's
Yeah, and it's one where I can tell you right now, having that done to National or to ACT or to New Zealand First, if they had what they applying to Te Pāti Māori applied to them, they would scream as if it's murder.
Oh, they absolutely would. They would scream bloody murder.
Yeah.
Woe is me, poor me, how dare you do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's happening to someone else that they don't like, it is therefore fine, and they don't care.
Yeah.